Okay, welcome. We will call to order Wednesday, October 1st, regular meeting of the Aspen Pitkin County Housing Authority. Cindy, would you call the roll?
I'd love to. Scott?
Present.
Carson?
Here.
John?
Here.
Kelly?
Here.
Peter?
Here.
And I don't think anybody's, I don't think Francie's going to join us, and then we have an empty position. Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda are the agenda amendments. I have none. Are there any requested amendments to the agenda? I have none. Hearing none, we will move to public comment. I don't believe, I can't see, I'm not in the meeting yet, but, okay, so I'm not seeing anyone online and no one in the room. We will close public comment and move to Board of Directors comments. And Peter, we'll start with you.
None.
All right, thank you. Kelly?
Let's see. I guess I'll report out. So you may or may not know Pitkin County is engaged in our update to our comprehensive plan that we do about once every 25 years. So it's a big deal, and it's still open for comment. You can go to Pitkin County Vision 2050. Now, part of that is taking a look at housing and where we locate housing in the county. And the very beginning of this comp plan process started with a group, like a community stakeholder group that we interviewed and selected, and they helped us figure out how we incorporate some of our climate change goals into our planning, and they also launched this broader planning. And one of the things that came out of that was, you know, how do we envision a community where we get the kind of growth and development that we want, and not sort of the growth and development that we're necessarily just subject to by forces all around us. And so part of that is, have we been thinking expansively enough about affordable housing? And so there's a proposal in the plan, you know, the draft plan now, to think more broadly about housing. Right now, we have just a prohibition on any kind of multifamily housing outside of the urban growth boundary. And so there have been people in the past who have come forth with development ideas, and they've not gone anywhere. They've not advanced. And so some of what we're looking at is there an appropriate style and density that might work in our areas outside of the urban growth boundary, as like an initial question, and then we sort of layer additional questions on top of that. Are there services to it? Does it have water? You know, those kind of important factors as well. But it's a shift. It's a proposed shift in how we think about housing. We have a variety of places in the county that you're probably familiar with and may not realize that are like triplexes or quads, you know, like if you drive down River Road, you know, there's a couple, like Chaparral Ranch, which was their mitigation for employee housing. There was some mitigation for like school district housing in the past. So, you know, would we be open to considering that? And so I just wanted to report that we're having that is proposed as an update to the plan right now. You know, I've always sort of said, like, you know, I think we could make a multifamily house look like a 15,000 square foot mansion, and like nobody would know the difference. You know, so that's a shift, I think, for getting to that goal. Or are we promoting the type of development and housing that we would see? And this would be for, you know, deed restricted, locally serving housing.
What's the adoption timeline for that?
So it's been open for public comment for quite a while, like just sort of going from nothing to something. So the going from nothing has been going on for 6 months, and now we have a draft plan that's open for comment until I think about the end of this month. Okay. And then that moves into a code writing process, which will take another year, where we actually update our land use code to match some of the changes and update our overlay maps and things like that. And all of those steps in the process are public processes that have public comment. opportunities with them as well. So I just wanted to share that. And then I just wanted to follow up. I think it just came to me and staff, a question about 13 Ajax Avenue. And so I just would ask staff maybe to respond. The question was, why is this a 2-bedroom? It doesn't fit the characteristics defined in our rules to be a 2-bedroom. That's in the lottery right now. And so I just...
It came into the system as a 2-bedroom. And so when it comes into the system as a 2-bedroom, it remains as a 2-bedroom. And all of Smuggler Run were classified as 2-bedroom units.
So our criteria for what a 2-bedroom
It
is...
was such a long time ago before that
follows
criteria
up.
was set. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And we have some process for changing classifications, I would assume.
If it really does depend. Our regulations pretty much state that how it came into it, because we have people who've modified an extra room and kind of made it a bedroom, and we keep it as a 2-bedroom. We do not market it as a 3-bedroom. We keep it as a 2-bedroom plus an office. Mm-hmm. So this is the same. All the units, all the homes there came in as 2-bedrooms. So because of that, that's how they remain in the system as a 2-bedroom unit.
And just so the rest of you know, the question was because it doesn't have a closet that's actually part of the bedroom. So then how do we deal, like, if somebody adds in a bedroom?
If they add something that is a bedroom, it stays as how it came into the system plus an additional room.
Okay, so like the Moes who are trying to add on to their place in
Yeah.
Burlingame would still be...
That amount,
There's one
that
right now,
bedroom.
I think, in Burlingame that's a 3+1 or 2+1. That just went up. That was, I mean, I think it's a bedroom, but it's still listed as
Yeah. Right. We don't. We've never and our regulations state that. It states that the how it comes into the system, how it was approved in the system, it stays that way. If somebody adds a room or whatever, it stays as that size of a home. And yeah, I mean, it's something that if you want to change, you can. But when it was approved, when the city approved it or the county approved it, they approved a certain amount of 2-bedroom units, a certain amount of 3-bedroom units, and 1-bedrooms, and so forth. That's why that's why was added to our regulations to keep it how it came into the system.
At that time, was there a justification or a study that was done for why that mix was chosen?
The mix was probably chosen because they were looking at what's needed, and just like the categories, what's kind of need. This is how many category 2s we want. This is how many category 4s we want, and so forth. Because that's how Burlingame. I remember Burlingame 1. Pam and I went to every single unit because they said, we need this amount of category 3s, this amount of category, and we went through to see, is this one better than this one to put a category 4 on it, and it's like, it's a toss-up because they were all basically the same. So that was not the easiest thing to do. So it really is kind of how it was developed into the process. All these units, because Smuggler Run was part of Smuggler Park subdivision when it came into the system, and it was I think it was mitigation for the preserves. I can't remember if that's the case, if that's correct or not, but they were all classified as, and they were classified as modulars at that point in time too, not mobile homes. But that's how a lot of the lenders still see it as mobile homes, even though we had it classified as modulars. But they all came in as the same, and specifically adding that that a bedroom has to have a closet was just added a few years ago. So that was way before that property got approved as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thanks. I'd just if you reply.
I did
with
reply. The person who questioned it, I did reply.
Okay. Okay. Well, it'd be great if you could point me to the code language, and then I can
will
just
do
follow
that.
up with her. That'd be super helpful. Thanks. I think that's it for me.
Thanks, Kelly. John?
Yeah, I wanted to mention that at our most recent council meeting, the Carter down in Glenwood gave a little presentation, and there are 88 total units. 20 units are spoken for leaving 68 units to still be filled by lower-income employees here in the valley. And I also wanted to make some
Do they have
comments
a
about.
specific AMI on that?
There are, and it was too complicated
Yeah.
for me to really.
Yeah, I
They're
think the
competing-
target is 80.
Are they
is like
competing for
80%.
ACI with
They're
us?
not income restricted at all, but the purchase price is based on how much you make.
Okay.
Yeah. Great deal for people that qualify. I also wanted to address, I got some feedback from locals about Mick Ireland's most recent column about housing. And I just wanted to say, as we go forward, renewing deed restrictions, I want to make sure that the retirement clause stays as is. I am not in any way, shape, or form into forcing any retirees to move out.
Just point of clarification, that is in the regulations, not the deed restriction.
Okay.
I'd like to. I think there was several misleading things in that article. I'm not like Mick, we're buddies, but the first being that APCHA is involved in the Burlingame process. I mean, not Burlingame, the lumberyard ownership and development agreement, and any of that, is frustrating because we spend so much time trying to say we don't develop housing, and so. We're not developing the lumberyard either,
Right.
just to say. So, and then, I do think we've actually done a lot to support our retired community. I mean, in recent years, we've lowered the retirement age, the age that you can retire into a place, depending on if you've worked 10 years or more. I think we have a closer collaboration with the senior center than we've ever had in the past. Our right sizing program is an incentive. It's not a requirement. So I don't know. I think there are plenty that we're doing to, be very collaborative. I mean, I also would say, the county was very intentional in our housing tax to allow for potential future use of that money for senior housing as an option. So anyway, that's my reaction.
All true.
Scott.
Kelly?
Oh.
Yeah, I'd like to
Editing none.
reiterate what John said there, and kind of give ourselves a little bit of a pat on the back because we are doing good work to protect the community. And I'd like to also emphasize that if we want new young professionals and people to move here and dedicate their careers, that the end of life for that is something that we're demonstrating. And if we show that we are welcoming and reciprocal in the end of that process, we're going to attract more talent, more young professionals, and more energy to our community. So here to that. I also wanted to mention that although I missed the meeting last time with CORE, I have met with them several times, and I'm really excited about all the work that they're doing. I wanted to just quickly mention, because they're dedicated to putting around a minimum of 40% of their efforts towards the community priority partners or participants in our community, that in a lot of ways our values are aligned. And so this is an opportunity for me to do a little bit of business development for them. They have for every $2 donated to CORE, they have a local entity who's willing to match $1 on that. So this is a great opportunity for us and the community around us to support CORE's mission, to support social equity, and to support the most vulnerable amongst us, while we're also improving the quality of our housing stock.
Right.
Thank you, Scott. And not to pile on, but I had some comments on it too. Of I mean the comment about the age of 60 just seemed a little bit arbitrary. I'm not sure where I think I missed one meeting in the last 2 years, and maybe it was talked about at that one meeting, but I don't think so. And so it just, to me, it felt a little fear-mongerish. I don't. Those were not conversations that I've been a part of.
Same.
And as a matter of fact, I actually had someone approach me that I did not know, and they said, "You're Carson, right? I watch you on GrassRoots. I've seen you. I watch the APCHA meetings, and so if they're watching, hi Pat." But just sort of the comments were just very. just a lot of gratitude and just very appreciative of the work that that the board and staff do, and just how grateful they were to live in APCHA housing. They, long-term community residents. They're retired right now. I mean, it was a very good conversation again, and this was somebody who just recognized from GrassRoots. So I think, to echo your comments, pat on the back for all involved. The next thing, obviously, we have a board vacancy. I'm assuming has that been posted?
Yes,
It
it's
has,
been
okay.
posted.
On both bodies'
Perfect.
websites.
And the other question that I had is with regards to the alternate. So is Peter, so then Peter is the alternate, and then he will stay the alternate? Will Peter become the voting member, and then the new person is the alternate?
Peter can apply to be the new.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he would have to apply to be,
Yes.
to be the voting member. Got it.
Because it's for that term of office.
Yeah.
So it's for the new term, for a different term of office, he would have to apply.
That seems, is that how most boards are?
Yeah.
Is it?
That's how they all work. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Can I ask one question about, Kelly brought this up in another meeting about if there's a formula for what the turnover is in APCHA and kind of the aging, and if there's, what the velocity is through the system. And just thinking about the hospital's proposal and the institute's proposal, and then lumberyard all being rental units. I'm just curious how that changes the pressure going forward on APCHA lotteries for ownership. And, we anticipate that there's going to be more applicants, or, if there's any significance to adding a lot more rental units versus ownership units, and if there was originally intended to be a balance between the two, or it's just sort of, random. It doesn't make a difference. So I was just curious. We talked about it at one time, and I'm not saying it's something we should explore, but I was just thinking about those projects coming online and what it means in the future.
Could you restate your question?
So I was just wondering if there's any interest in exploring what Kelly had brought up a couple meetings ago, where we were talking about if we have, years ago, I remember Skippy had something that said, this curve is going to shift, and then we're going to have a lot of people retired in the units, and then we're going to have a backlog, and there's potentially a way to organize it so that that you don't get those bottlenecks over time. And I'm just thinking about if lumberyard being all rental units rather than some portion of ownership units. Does that make a difference in the system at all? If we're adding a lot of rental units with the hospital and the institute, does that create more pressure on ownership? We're comfortable with that. I'm guessing somebody has an algorithm that says, this is the throughput today, and this is what it'll be in the future. I don't know.
My response would be that the bottlenecks that we're seeing in the age demographics and the shift towards older residents and ownership is not a result of local policy or APCHA-specific dynamics, but is the result of a greater housing market, affordability crunch that's happening on a national level and a state level, and that it would be potentially damaging for us to address it in the local policy framework, because it wouldn't address the larger dynamic that's happening.
Well, I think you could measure, what percentage of units are occupied by workforce versus retirees, and, what is the target amount of workforce to house, and what's your gap, right?
Yeah.
Is a little bit of.
And we have some of that data, right, from just the demographics, as far as, now it's right, it's sort of forecasting static of no change, but I think the last numbers that I saw, it was something like 59 in 10 years, something like 59% will be 65 or older. Right, and so, you know, I mean, that's just what our own data says. I mean, but I think, Kelly, I think to your point, if you wanted to study it, I think that's how you would do it, is just sort of monitor that. I don't know if that's something that, as part of the affidavit, I mean, that information is probably readily available.
Yeah, we're completing the affidavit, and we'll be, you know, hopefully slicing and dicing it a few different ways to pull out interesting things. We have found that, you know, it's hard to figure out how old the owners are, because you often get the affidavit from one of the owners and not maybe the spouse. You get people of retiree age, but that doesn't necessarily mean they've retired.
Right.
And people have retired, but they're also doing something on the side. So it's
I think it's
not
less
as-
about age and more
Yeah.
about just work status, working
So
or
it's-
versus retirement.
It's not as easy as it might sound, but we can certainly look at that and see, using the data we have, what we can pull out readily.
Well, and structurally, I mean, the rental market is serving workforce, right?
Yeah.
We don't have any, do we have an accommodation for people to stay in a rental who are retired?
You can stay we do not require people to move out if they retire. They can retire in their unit.
Okay, under the same criteria, 10 years of work
Exactly,
history and
yeah,
all that.
yeah. Whereas snowmass, if you're in rentals,
Right.
you have to leave.
Mm-hmm.
But in ours, if you've worked a certain amount of years and you retire, you can stay in that unit.
Mm-hmm. And you would know that because you do 2-year qualifications. Yeah.
I would just quickly point to the National Association of Home Builders priced out estimate that says that around 75% of U.S. households can't afford a medium-priced new home in 2025. that trend says a lot more about what we're seeing here in terms of the rental ownership mix than any sort of local policy.
And our statistics are meaningfully worse than that.
Yeah.
But I think that's an interesting, like, if we're doing one of those education blurbs in the newspaper or whatever, I don't think a lot of people know, and Mick's column sort of pointed to that ownership, you're allowed to retire, and rental, you're not. I don't think a lot of people know you can retire in rental. I didn't realize that.
I can make
I know
that
in the
point in
properties that
future,
we
yeah.
manage, they do know that, but
Yeah.
maybe in some of the other ones, they don't, but, yeah.
I would think that conversation would come at
When we qualify every
Requalification,
2
yeah.
years, yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay, Matthew, Executive Director's comments.
Good evening, everyone. Matthew Gillen, Executive Director. Speaking of the affidavit, the tailored affidavits to our 300 or 400 customers who need an extra push, they have gone out. We are doing another coffee morning. You guys are welcome to attend, and that's October 14th at APCHA, and that's specifically aimed at HOA officers and, you know, people part of the HOA, and that it's an opportunity for them to meet us, but we're really pitching it as an opportunity to start meeting each other. So we're going to be creating forums for them to meet each other, and then we're going to build that out as to sharing solutions, ideas, and creating a forum for them to talk amongst themselves, and for us to help to facilitate that conversation about what's working well in the HOA world. What time is that? Early. I'll send you out the invitation. I think 8.
I think it's,
Thank you, Emily. And we're also doing HOA classes on October 15th and November 12th. The October 15th is on fiduciary duties, and remotely on November 12th, and that's on the HOA budget process. The next newsletter will be going out this mid-month. So we're excited about that. We have wrapping up some of the budget items from last year, where we've repaved Truscott, Smuggler, Mountain Apartments, and Aspen Country Inn is getting repaved this week. So that's finishing off a big project across the city. And I don't know if any of you have driven through Truscott recently, but thanks to our maintenance staff, we have a very large flashing stop sign, which is great, which is because I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago, we got that put a crosswalk in because we'd had a number of residents hit by cars there, including 2 APCHA employees actually. So we're doing everything we can to increase that, and we've got a nice flashing red light now, stop light. And on Aspen Country Inn, the communications, initial communications, stage 1 has been completed and and stage 2 is now going on. We'll be assessing that at the end of the month. We had 1 couple from Truscott to move into Aspen Country Inn today. Was it yesterday?
Yeah, a couple of days
Yeah.
ago.
And
They were actually in a studio unit, and we were able to move them into a lesser cost unit, into a 2-bedroom at ACI.
So that's great. And we have
Good job.
3 or 4 very strong candidates for ACI. And I mentioned last week that we were going to be doing a Spanish language radio ad, and that is up for all of October. So we're pulling out everything we can to publicize those units. And City of Aspen Finance and APCHA met with the tax credit partner, and so they're fully aware, and we're working on, and the finance people are working on some ideas from that point of view as well. So we're doing everything we can to fill Aspen Country in.
Just a thought that just came
Yeah.
into my head. Could we reach out to all of the community partners, the contractors that are on our list and on CORE's list with this information?
Oh yeah, send
'Cause,
them
I
the.
mean, bring some of those contractors up Valley.
We did. We've paid for community meeting spots all the way down the valley to have a physical flyer put up. But that's a good idea. We can send the flyer to the contractors as well. Thanks, Scott. We can do that. And that's what we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Cindy?
Again, continue to get on our website. We do add anywhere between 2 to 4 new units every single week for ownership opportunities. And they range from anywhere from Category 2 to Category 5. And we still have an RO home that we've at the North 40 that we have listed as well. So please get on our website and look at that, and make sure you sign up for notifications, because we still also have some rentals available, and you have to actually submit interest on our website. So instead of calling in and saying you're interested, get on our website, submit interest, and then with it, it'll ask you a certain amount of questions as to your income and stuff. And if you've answered it yes or no, and if you answer it the correct way, you will be contacted, since we still have some openings at ACI and T2.
Great. Thank you, Cindy. Okay, I'll move to the consent calendar. One item on the consent calendar, minutes of September 17th, 2025, regular meeting. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Motion from Kelly, second from John. Any discussion, corrections? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Scott,
Yes.
Carson,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
Motion carries. Okay, next item, as many of you know, John has left us for South Carolina. So we need to elect a chair of the board.
I would like to nominate Carson Schmitz for chair of the board.
I would like to second that nomination and move to close nomination.
I second that movement. Close nomination.
Carson, would
Any
you
any other
accept the
discussion?
honor?
I would. Thank you. Any other discussion? No. All right, it is a roll call vote.
Scott,
Yes.
Carson,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes. then thank
and
you.
Peter.
Yes.
Okay,
Now we
and
need vice chair.
now I was just going to say, so now we need vice chair.
I'm going to go ahead and nominate Scott Woolley for vice chair.
I'll second that nomination and move to close nomination.
There you go.
Would you like to be-
No, I'm good.
And it's a roll call vote as well.
Okay, Scott,
Yes.
Carson,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
and Peter.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, moving along. Compliance update. Jackie.
Yes, sir. Let me
Sorry, you guys seem to have enough on your hands.
I got plenty on my hands.
You,
I'm
if you
good.
wanna go.
Is that easier? That might be easier, yes.
Yeah.
That's just one of my jobs.
He's got some.
I don't have to bring my name tag, do I?
No.
Okay, good. Yeah, actually, I'd rather stand, that's what I'm used to doing, but we will sit. All right, good evening, everyone. I haven't spoken in a while here. I'm the compliance officer with APCHA, and I've been asked to give a high-level review on what we've been doing with compliance recently. And just to remind everybody, when we speak about compliance cases, that we do not get into detailed information, and particularly in things that are actually pending right now, but even in past statistics, we just want to keep it a high-level view. But we want to let you know what we've been doing and where we're headed.
And that's to protect the board, because individual cases could come before the board as an appeal. So that's.
Oh, thank you, Matthew. That's okay. We'll have something else in a minute. As part of the packet, there was a brief statistical highlight. We'll get into that more. I actually have a PowerPoint. But the three big numbers that we're going to talk about today are what are called unit net gain, and that is a compliance matter that resulted in the turnover of an ownership unit without having to go through extra staff steps, like appeals to the hearing officer and the board and to court. Audit actions, we did a fairly significant ownership audit about a year ago. We'll talk about that a little bit. And I have been with APCHA since the 1st of April in 2023. And so we actually pulled some statistics during my tenure here to try to get a look on what we've been doing trending in the last, 2.5 years maybe? So also with the packet, we have put together a graphic depiction of what the compliance process looks like. I'm a firm believer that until you have notice, it's really difficult to do enforcement. And so Matthew asked me to conceptualize what the process looks like, because we noticed that, first of all, anything beginning with the red notice of on a letter frightens folks. And they are being looked at, but there's a process involved, and we're fair and we take it step by step. And so instead of trying to read it and pull it out of the regulations, I put a little flow chart together. This is certainly not my career choice, but we can review it and talk about it later if you have suggestions, a way to streamline it, arts it up, whatever we want to do. But we can come back to that in a little bit. The little bit of an entry is just the nuggets in the regulations that describe the APCHA compliance process in narrative form, and that's the authorizing documents, defining deed restriction, what the governing regulations are, the regulations and the deed restrictions, very basic concepts that we all understand that a new homeowner or an applicant for a homeowner needs to appreciate. That it's an administrative process, and finally, the role of the resident and the responsibilities of APCHA and the resident in order to stay within compliance in our affordable housing program. So if you take a look at that, if you have questions, I would like to just kind of go through the report, and if we have questions on anything, we could chat at the end, if that's all right with you all. First of all, it says 10/1/2026. That is a fat finger, and so I apologize for that. But it is today, and it is the 25th of October. Happy October 1st. The first page that we're going to talk about is open compliance cases. And as of 9/24, when I pulled this together, we had 19. I actually added one today, so I have 20 open compliance cases. You will notice on the website that we posted open compliance cases, and you'll notice that there are only 10 there. And thank you, Karen, for putting this up. You'll notice under violation status, several of them have the word attorney. Those are still open on my desk, but as far as overall in the compliance pipeline, those are actually closed out. And so why there's a discrepancy between my 20 cases and the 10 that are on the website, that's the explanation for that. We have obviously pulled out the resident name and the location of the address, but this sort of gives you the trend of what we have now. When I came on board, I probably had 127 open cases, and we've worked through those, and we've gotten it down to this. But it takes a while to do that. And so it is no reflection on how we were doing things, but I've been able to devote all of my time to compliance. And so this is where we're at. Next is the compliance actions resulting in unit net gain. This is something Matthew and staff, management staff, decided we should start paying attention to when we are able to turn over a violated unit without having to go through a hearing officer, appeal to the board, and get the attorney involved. And then the most costly is then going to court. And if we can resolve those issues, those violations at the staff level, we're actually doing sort of how the system was meant to work. We have a notice of investigation, notice of violation. Another tool that we've been using most recently is the site visit. We are 3 for 3 in site visits in the last couple months. We had 3 site visits and 3 units that are going up for sale. And so without having to go through anything beyond what staff handles internally, we were able to have 3 units go over. Those units in particular, and I'll talk about this later, are people were simply not residing in their unit. And I think it works when you can go face to face and you chat with the resident inside their home, and not in an intimidation way, but more in a face-to-face, let's talk brass tacks here, and here's what's really going on. And they understand, and they appreciate the rules. So that's a good tool that we will continue to use.
I'm just curious, can you just illustrate, like, what does that look like?
A site visit?
Yeah.
Under the regulations, at least 24 hours in advance, we give written notice, and we say that we would like to come and visit your home and conduct a site visit. It should take no more than 5-10 minutes. We simply would like to look around and make sure everybody's living here, make sure number of people seem to be living here. I'm uncomfortable with it because it feels very invasive, but you have to do some due diligence. We don't want people abusing the process. And so that's where the uncomfortableness comes. But you see if there's toothbrushes in the bathroom, and you see if there's food in the refrigerator. And we had a very
closets.
we had a very successful one recently.
Empty closets, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And we had one where we were there in August, and the Christmas tree was still up. So little indicators that that help us do our job better. And as you can imagine, the not being in residence is a very big complaint we get, often from disgruntled neighbors, but someone's coming to goings aren't dispositive of whether they're residing in the unit, but they're clues. And the site visit, I think, works well for, in a gentle way, going through that. 2 of them, we didn't even get to a notice. They said on the spot. One of them, we had already issued a notice of investigation, and she decided to sell. I also have to add that we added one more yesterday, so we're actually up to 15. We started this in 24, and we're up to 9 in 2025. So we've had 15 units that have turned over that way. And then the next page
So
is...
15 units not residing in the unit?
No, 15 units that we gained a unit without having to go
Okay.
past the notice of investigation.
Thank you.
Yes.
So,
Good.
I would just say, at a cost of $1.5 million per new unit, my math says that's 22.5 million that the compliance actions have saved taxpayers.
Absolutely. Thank you. And this is just a blown-up graphic of essentially what units were turned over. And you'll see that some are in the still listing stages. I wouldn't say we got more aggressive, but I'm getting better at it. So we're starting to implement that more, and we have several listings in tour and lottery. Yes, sir.
A quick question. So just to drill down on that last
Yes.
comment. So are you saying that 15 units have turned over just through site visits?
Not through site visits. 3 were site visits.
Okay.
And one was an NOI and a site visit. The rest were, it's hard to read here, but in 24, we had 4 NOV for sales that
Okay.
4 sales came out of an NOV, 1 NOI, and another, the mother willed it to the daughter, but she couldn't qualify.
Right.
So they were required to sell similarly in 2025.
Okay, thanks.
And so just to get a little more detail for your interest.
And those, and just to really reiterate that, those sales were, Jackie checking up, them agreeing to the sale. They weren't appealed to the board. They didn't go to court, so they were very painless. But it shows the value of having Jackie checking up on people.
Yes.
And the value of some of them, we're doing full-blown NOIs and NOVs. And so we're presenting good cases to folks in a lot of cases too. And when they see it on paper, it's really hard to argue that they're not in violation, and they choose.
NOI and NOV?
I am so sorry. In the compliance process, when you look at our little chart, the notice of investigation is sort of the first letter. It's the letter that says there's been a complaint, or there's a belief that perhaps there's something going on here. We just want to give you an opportunity to explain what we've seen. The notice of violation is when APCHA has applied the facts to the regulations and or the deed restriction and determined that there is a violation. And at that point, the resident may try to cure and come back into compliance. They may sell, which is some of those cases, or they may appeal to the hearing officer. There's a couple deed restrictions that aren't quite like that. We're not left with many that don't allow the appeal to the hearing officer, but that then kicks it into the next level that we're trying to avoid with this.
Sorry to ask this question, but
No.
you said that 14, 6 in 2024, 8 in 2025 have occurred without it going to notice a violation?
No, without going to an appeal to this body,
Okay.
To the hearing officer.
Okay.
to the hearing officer and then this body.
15 out of how many notices of?
I don't have that number off the
Was it-
top of my head.
Okay.
But
452 as of the end of 2024.
well, those are compliance cases, but a fraction of those will go to notice of violations. A lot of the cases that get opened, and it's just a generalization, I'm not prepared to talk about it, but we have the opportunities to bring people back into compliance, or they were found out of compliance, typically through a notice of violation, or an appeal or further on. Sometimes we get complaints and there's just not enough information. My neighbor upstairs makes too much noise, please look into it. And you're like, I would love to, but you got to give me more. So there's a variety of outcomes that can come with those 452 cases that are open.
You also find you also find it where it's not true. You might have one neighbor
Feuding
who's
neighbors.
upset with another neighbor, and they're just complaining about that person. So we see some of that, unfortunately, as well.
I was just curious what this was saying is that like a lot of people were just saying, okay, I understand you're enforcing the rule or whatever, we're happy to like sell, and it's been very civil.
Absolutely, yeah. That's exactly what we found.
So is your impression, had you not investigated, it probably would have gone on?
No,
I would say yes.
yes, I would say yes.
Okay.
Investigated how?
Well, had it
We didn't
not-
get the complaint.
Had they not been approached, they would have continued to not live in the unit, or?
Oh,
They
well,
were
yeah,
like-
that's my role, is to
Yeah.
investigate those. But if the complaint hadn't come in, I might not know about it. That's why our complaint system is incredibly important. And people have a lot of trouble with it being anonymous, but we investigate everything. It is just a suggestion to point us in a direction. We begin with an entire investigation because we need to be fair with all the residents. But it does demonstrate how important that can be in getting cases.
I am just curious if there's, in other affordable housing systems, if there's another way of generating complaints or this type of information without people anonymously
Absolutely.
complaining?
I will conduct different internal reviews of things, and one of the ones I can talk about in a little bit, but we're having a lot of folks that we see are probably for tax purposes, they're titling their home in the name of a trust, an LLC, and under most deed restrictions, it needs to be in a natural person, in the actual name, true name of the owner. And so by doing sort of internal reviews of those things will come up. And, you know, I'm not trying to generate and look for people, but it is a way that we go to ensure that people are in compliance.
Don't we also have so the city does, I think, doesn't the city have a crawler for STRs that looks for
Yes.
STRs, and then we cross-reference that with APCHA addresses to make sure that nobody in APCHA housing is.
I was just thinking, like, is it creating what type of culture or community within housing?
Oh.
You know, like, do people feel like other people are ratting them out, and would there be another way to?
Well, the other way is the audit. It's the audit and the affidavit. So yeah, it's two. There's two
Okay.
or three different ways. We're not just relying on complaints.
Yeah. Yep.
Tom.
Yeah, to expand a little bit on this issue of complaint-based enforcement. An anonymous complaint is not useful at all in terms of actually making a case. In other words, somebody calls and says, I'm not giving you my name, but Mr. So-and-so is in violation. Whatever that person says or whatever information you get from that person who's anonymous can't be used against the alleged violator. So what it does is alert staff to the potential for somebody to be investigated. And the investigation, the information generated by the investigation is the only information you can use. If you know, the thing about a complaint-based system is, one, it's voluntary. I mean, there, you know, a lot of people in the program don't like to see other people in violation. They're not always driven by personal animosity. The other thing is, if you want a level of, in my opinion anyway, if you want a level of enforcement, a comparable level of enforcement without a complaint-driven, or at least partially complaint-driven system, you have to have a lot more staff to do a lot more investigation. So those are just some things to bear in mind about it.
Thanks, Tom. Good point to move on? The next part? Okay. And we can always come back to things at another date, or the next is audit actions. When I came on board that summer, management asked if we could put together a program where we audited ownership units. Within the regulations, we have two kinds of audits. We have random audits and we have audits for cause. And so this was in the random audit category, and what we did was Andrew helped, and we took all ownership addresses and we put them in an anonymizer. They flipped them around and spit them out in a number order, and so we didn't even know who the owners were, and then went down the list one by one by one. And as you'll see, that I started in July, and I started 6 a month. We weren't sure how much it was going to take, and then I did 6 the next. So anyways, by the end of it, we got about 6 months worth of data, about 120 audits. And by early 2024, we had a pretty good idea what was going on. At the time we sort of shut it down in April of 2024, we had 91% compliance. Now, that doesn't mean that the first look, everybody was in compliance, but back and forth with follow-ups, we were able to, and again, it was a little like a site visit in that it was a one-on-one conversation to get these folks back into compliance. And so when we shut down the numbers and froze them in time, it was 91%, which left 11 folks that were, 7 of them had notice of violations issued, and 4, we couldn't follow up and contact them, or there was a variety of reasons, but we ended up with 11. Since then, we have now resolved 9 out of 11 of those. and one of the properties sold. 5 over the course since April 2024 came back into compliance, and 3 with the 2025 audit are back into compliance. The 2 that are left open, we're probably going to NOV. And at this point, depending on what the regulations and their deed restrictions say, they're probably selling their home might be very much on the table. And that raises a very important point. When we come across matters where there are multiple compliance issues with somebody or a repeat offender, they're doing the same thing again and again. The word aggressive is very strong, but we more aggressively pursue those people. Those people don't appear to have a lot of respect for what we do. The fact that they are given an opportunity to live in affordable housing, and I can sing all the praises of it, but it's really important at that point that we make sure that we bring those people to task and that we bring what is available to us in enforcement with those folks. And so those 2 folks in particular, which just reminded me that that's how we handle those things, that's what we'll be going next with that. We're not currently conducting any random audits. The affidavit adding documentation addressed that. And we're, like Matthew said, we're going to be going through this year's results and kind of decide what our next step is in the most efficient and fair way that we can make sure that our ownership units, like our rental units, have some sort of a recurring compliance component to their ownership.
Can I just ask,
Sure.
so when all these audits come in that staff is just sending out the last notice about, you'll get all the audits?
Affidavits.
Affidavits?
Sorry.
That's okay.
And you will, is the plan to randomly audit them, or do you audit all of them?
No.
Affidavits?
The audit was when we didn't have any documents coming in the affidavit, and we wanted to do a sampling. There was all this talk that nobody's listening to everybody's out of compliance in APCHA units, and so in 23 we said, okay, well, let's find out what's really going on out there. And surprisingly but pleasingly, we had a lot of people that really were trying to work hard to be compliant in their units. The affidavit is a different matter. It's a way to sort of streamline that process along with the annual affidavit or the biannual affidavit that they're required to fill out. And we've added the document component this year so that we can get some information. There's been, I remember there were people that were saying, I've lived here 20 years and no one's asked me for anything. We're like, well, that's exactly the point. We need to kind of take a pulse check and see where everybody is.
I mean, but we're looking at Schedule E to make sure that they don't have real estate in the OEZ.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we're looking for OEZ violations. We're looking to make sure they don't have a Minnesota address on their Colorado tax returns. Tax returns are a sensitive subject amongst people, but it's a very important tool for us. But yes, exactly. We're looking for multiple areas in the compliance spectrum. Employment, obviously being top, residency, and OEZ.
So all the affidavits get reviewed, audited, so to speak?
Sure, yeah, we look at every.
They're looked at, we don't audit them. If we see that there's an issue in them, then she will do further research on them. So everyone is looked at when they come in, and then it's like, oh, this is fine, so, yeah.
Yeah, and that includes the documents that came in too, not just their affiant.
And that's the same for complaints, right? You're looking at them all, and they can lead to an audit.
Oh, absolutely.
But they don't necessarily. Right.
Well, and yes, and an audit is kind of a specialized, but it's typically an NOI, a notice of investigation.
Right.
But because it's defined in the regulations, we use that term. Complaint-based will usually come from some sort of a complaint. An audit might come from another, but it's the interchanging word of a notice of investigation. That we have not found a violation. This is your opportunity to help us understand what's going on. In fact, if you'll look at the next page, the audits for cause, I think I've done 4 since we've been here, and those are just something came up, there was an issue, and instead of we just wanted to figure out what's going on, get some information. I can tell you now that the last one, 53334, it has been closed and they were in compliance. So they break both ways. It's a tool, and that's all enforcement is finding the right tool to get the right information. In my tenure, the next page, thank you, Karen. As Kelly mentioned earlier, 452 compliance actions have been opened. Those included the audits and some affidavit reviews after the 2023 affidavit went out.
Is that both rental and ownership?
When
These are all ownership.
These are all ownership.
All ownership. So is there any compliance issues in rental housing?
Yeah, the compliance process for rental is every 2 years they have to completely requalify.
Okay.
That's the compliance mechanism for rental, a full requalification every 2 years.
But there's, let's say somebody's not living in their rental unit, like that's a complaint that comes up in ownership. I'm
mean,
not
I
really
can-
concerned about it, I'm just like
I
wondering.
mean, I guess we could, but we have our hands full doing a full requalification packet every 2 years for rental. So, you know,
Okay.
that's
I
what
I
specifically.
wouldn't imagine you have a lot of people renting and not living there.
Right.
Right. We
I mean, I don't.
I mean, I'm
I don't
sure it's
recall. I
happened,
don't
but-
recall that ever happening.
We had, a few years ago, we had a renter who was actually subletting his unit out. And we found that out because we got a complaint on it, and it was a rental unit, and we talked to the property manager, and he was asked to leave. So we do that, but they're rare.
Okay.
and Tom will be able to inform, I think.
Tom, did you have something?
Yeah, briefly, on the rental side, the most common violations that I see are failure to pay rent or failure to document employment.
Thanks, Tom.
And then just to sort of wrap things up, I was asked to consider what we're seeing trend-wise. And these will be increased numbers or some particular topics we might want to create awareness, particularly in the community, just to be aware of. One of the things, and we're seeing it in the current affidavits as they're coming back in, is the title issue that I mentioned before. People are getting with their tax preparers, and their tax people are saying, oh, you really need to create a revocable family trust. And the next thing we know, we look in the appraiser's website, and it is now the John Smith Family Trust instead of Joanna and John Smith. So we need to get those back in the true name. Another one is 75% income earned in Pitkin County. This is a less significant, but perhaps a more important violation. And that's because we want to ensure that our units are for local folks, not people that are working remotely, not people that have an office in Aspen, but that conduct most of their work outside of Pitkin County or even outside the valley. So we're paying attention to that. It's very well defined in the regulations, but it's just another issue that we keep the pulse of. Self-employed, some self-employed workers, it's very easy. They have a 1099, and their records are intact, and they have P&Ls and everything else. There's other occupations that are a little more loosey-goosey, and we get everything in order to prove their 1,500 hours. We took pains in the regulation review to make sure that people understood that we really do need a spreadsheet, something to verify the hours. And it's their responsibility. We've had cases in the past where people bring bank boxes of documents and calendars and say, well, I work really hard. So we want to make it a little more objective. It's one of those things where self-employment without having W-2s, 1099s, it's a little more difficult route to go. We don't discourage it, but we're going to ask you to help us a little bit and make sure that we have ways to do that. And so we're addressing that with explaining to them that we need just a little bit more because you got to give us some hours that we can verify.
Jackie, do you feel like that's, I mean, like when we started up the audits, I know there was a lot of heartburn. I mean, do you feel like that has gotten better as we've sort of gotten people into that kind of, I guess, rotation of if you're self-employed, this is the expectation? Do you feel like there's been an improvement, or do you feel like you're still bumping up against
That's
the
an
same?
excellent question. And honestly, I hadn't thought about it, but I do believe there has been an improvement. I think it's almost perhaps a word of mouth thing that is getting out there. But we are getting, I'm seeing people that obviously Googled P&L, but by gosh, they've made the effort to do that, and they've gone through their records to try to make that happen. And that really is an encouraging thing because those are residents that say, I appreciate the program, and let's make it happen. But thank you for that question. I think there is.
I'll jump in really quickly.
Yes.
I've had several community members who have come to me asking for support in this area where they said, how do I document my hours? What are the requirements? What are these things? And I've actually built out spreadsheets and business plans for neighbors and friends so that they can work through this process, just like of that kind of a resource, like a templated resource on a website or in some sort of outreach to make your life a little easier and uniform. Just an idea.
It came across in some early discussions, particularly when we were heading into doing the audits. But I think maybe it's worth a discussion again. Obviously, we didn't act on it. I was kind of digging back to ground, and now we're at a good spot here, and maybe it's worth a discussion.
And Scott, I'll tell you, one of the things that we're working on and that Matthew's taking the helm of and getting us to all work on is kind of the ABCs of our program. Where it's something that we are going to require people to look at so they really understand what our program's about. And hopefully that's some of the stuff that we can provide. If you're self-employed, here's an idea of how you can show your work. Here's something else that you can do. Because I would agree there are some people out there that they work really, really hard, but they don't do invoices, they don't do anything else, they do other things. This way we'll be able to tell them this is what we need to see. And give them some type of an idea of how to do it, then it'll help them to get qualified and stay qualified with us.
I think the fear was that, there are many different companies and self-employed people who, we didn't want to limit it at the time to this is the APCHA way. So, there's a balance there, but we can definitely revisit
Well, because
that.
it's, right, it's, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what what staff's goal is if you find somebody that does appear to be working but is having a hard time documenting it, to work with them so that in the next year they can easily document what they're doing. Correct?
Yeah, thanks.
And that's a really good point. Just because I help to enforce these things, my goal is to have people in housing, but we do have to have rules in place, and someone's got to kind of do that, and it's okay, and so we have to do that. Anyway, that was just gibberish, but the last one we kind of talked about before, not residing in the unit, and that's always been a tough one, but I think we're going to start increasing site visits a little bit, and again, 24 hours notice, we come in, ask them to be there, and take a look around, takes a few minutes, and
I don't want you to profile, but like the people not living in their units, what's the typical reason?
Elsewhere. They're
What's
not
that?
living. This
Yeah.
is kind of their vacation home.
yeah, we get that. Living with a boyfriend down valley because he's got a nice big home and she's got an apartment, but they like to scam weekends, whatever you can imagine. Yeah, whatever you can imagine. And
Great setup.
next steps, and this is going to be it. As Matthew talked about before, we're going to pile through what's left over in the 2025 biannual affidavits. We have sort of a one-off project coming up. We get a notice of unpaid property taxes, and so we'll reach out and just, hello, taxes are coming up. They're going to, there's things that could happen to you, and so we help remind our residents about that. What'll happen too are people that no longer have a mortgage, and paying the property tax might fall through the cracks at that point too. And then continuing, we're always handling the complaints, and like I said, some of the other internal things like deed reviews and those sorts of stuff. Thank you. Are there any lingering questions? Okay.
Jackie.
Oh, yes, sir.
I've got one. That some data shows that around 62% of Pitkin County employees are commuting into the county for work.
Okay.
I don't know what my question is, but
Starting off well, though.
when we're requiring 75% of the income for people
Oh.
who live in the county to be in the county, there seems to be a little bit of some crossing wires in terms of incentives and reality here. Is there any conversation about this happening? Are you considering this? I mean, we have a community that's in flux.
Sure.
And generally speaking, remote work is becoming more popular, and employers and employment opportunities are leaving this town and this valley and this
Yes.
county. That 75% number at some point is going to become a problem, I feel. just because of concentration of the workforce and how many of us are not working in this area. That's a statement.
Yeah,
What do you think
no,
about
no,
it?
no. And I don't want to get into policy discussion. This is really just a hard numbers, and that is certainly drifting in that area. My main mantra is subsidize housing for people who need to work locally in Pitkin County.
Great.
And that's the goal, is to house the people that are here that have to be here to do their job.
Great.
That's not a definition, but it's the spirit, I think, of what we're trying to do. That doesn't mean that changes don't deserve real good discussions, and there seems to be a lot of areas where we can have good discussions. Please always keep those things in mind, because it is important for us to move with the times. But thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you,
And I think, I mean, before, we had a pretty extensive conversation about that 75%.
Right.
And
We wanted to make it higher.
as I'm right. I mean, anybody who has tried to hire anyone would be jumping up and down and screaming right now. Before we look at reducing and allowing remote work, I think we absolutely have to ensure that the brick and mortar people that are here on the ground trying to hire people, that what this program was designed for, that they're getting the people that they need before we ever think about opening up any sort of remote or relaxing any of the Pitkin County. And Pitkin County and City of Aspen, it's the Aspen Pitkin County Housing Authority. Right. And so I think it is totally fair and right that that's the requirement to live in APCHA housing. So but yeah, we had a very long conversation about that. And then I would just, Jackie, thank you. This board talks a lot about trust, about regaining public trust. And I think the compliance piece is the tip of the spear on trust. So thank you for the work that you're doing. I do see that Tom has his hand up. Tom, did you have a comment?
Yeah, briefly. I'm representing APCHA in 6 cases that are in active litigation in court right now. I'm happy to, with staff's assistance, we can schedule a executive session to update the board on those cases whenever you want to do that. Okay.
Thank you, Tom.
And I don't think you need me for the next agenda item, but I might, if it's okay, I'll sign off. Is that all right?
Feel free. Peter?
Hi, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Right.
Carson, thanks for your
Good
last
evening,
comments.
everyone.
Can I ask one
Bye.
quick question?
Oh, sure.
What do you, do we have any survey or feedback on what the buy-in is from residents on the compliance system as it is? Like, do most people think they like how it's currently structured?
The only thing that I've noticed is what we're trying to address with the graphic is just a confusion on what's next. And so I think we could begin with that, and then you can't complain about something you don't understand, perhaps. And so maybe we'll just make sure everybody understands. Well, okay, but I think we're going to try to make sure we educate first and give some notice. And I think it's an excellent system. I think it works. I think it's fair. At least as in the compliance things I've done in the past, I think this is well thought out, and I appreciate how it's going, but that doesn't mean much when there is always other opinions to consider. But I have not heard anything about that so far.
What was your question again, Peter?
I was just curious if there was any survey or feedback from residents saying we like the compliance system, or we prefer something different.
I think
about it.
Jackie's being too modest, because the feedback she usually gets when she sends a notice of investigation is, how dare you, don't you know who I am? I've lived here for so long. This is crazy. And Jackie has done an excellent job clearly articulating why she's doing it, and doing it politely and clearly, but the emphasis on polite and clear. And then people say, oh, you're not being friendly enough. But Jackie's job is to be polite and clear as to the needs of the program, what she wants. So I think that is the initial thing she has to deal with often, is that initial shock that they're being asked for things, and she does an excellent job, but no, people don't like it.
No, well, and I think that if you polled people, I think if you, what was it, 11% or 91% in compliance, I bet if you polled and said, are you satisfied? I bet 91% would say they're satisfied and 9% would say they're unsatisfied. I mean, I think it's a minority of very vocal people who get, caught being out of compliance, and that's typically who I think you hear from. That's been my experience. The overwhelming conversations I have with just people in the community is, thank you, we love APCHA, we wouldn't be here without it, it's amazing. I mean,
Yeah, until it's anonymous, and then things get weird.
oh,
Yeah.
sure.
That reminds me of what the police say about speed limits, is 85% of people will follow the speed limit. 50% won't.
There you go. Okay, moving along, we've got last item on the agenda here, continued discussion on capital reserve studies. Emily and Liz are here.
I think I'm just gonna go explore a little bit. I was like, no, you're not.
Here's some matches.
There we go. Okay, Emily Maynard, APCHA's Housing Policy Analyst.
And Liz Axberg, Housing Policy Analyst for the City of Aspen. And while Emily's presenting, I was involved with the capital reserve studies early on, but Emily's now really leading the work.
And I'll just give a shout out to Andrew too for being a part of the team. I think we need a team name, but he's also been a sounding board for all this HOA discussion stuff. So thanks to Andrew. We're here today as kind of a follow-up from our August meeting about the capital reserve studies. I was just gonna quickly remind you of some intended outcomes of this, review what we talked about last time so that I can then give some clarification and follow-up to some of the discussion points and questions that you all had from that discussion. And then I was gonna dive into sort of the first phase or first solution that we talked about that you all had mentioned that we should prioritize. It's also sort of the one that we've done the most work on so far. And then I was gonna just detail the event schedule for HOA education stuff, and you all will have an opportunity to chime in if there's something you feel like we've missed in this solution area, and it should be fairly quick and painless, I think. So, intended outcomes, we talked about this last time. Your goal in your 5-year strategic plan that states partner with HOAs and stakeholders on maintenance strategies and approach to achieve a well-maintained inventory by 2030. Just thought I'd ground the discussion in that goal again. And then some other outcomes. This discussion about surrounding APCHA HOAs has been going on for a while in the community, so I thought it would be a good opportunity to just say that we all sort of know that this has been on the back burner, and remind you that we're talking about solutions that are gonna hopefully last, so we don't have to talk about this again in 20 years or whatnot. So yeah, hoping to support HOAs in ways that help the inventory remain affordable to current and future owners, and we want to keep the workforce housed. And we hope that owners understand the reality of maintenance costs and can plan accordingly. Hoping HOAs will maintain reserve funds that allow for financing, and really performing that preventative maintenance to make these things last, and then budgeting for capital expenditures. Just a quick review of some of the high points from last time's discussion. The capital reserve studies showed the projected capital burden over the next 10 years of $8.7 million across 27 HOAs. And I have this star up here because I think I reported, and that was based off of RD3's number, which was 387. I ran the numbers again. It's actually 391 units. So if you remember something different, that's why. It's actually 391 units. And I'm going to talk a little bit more because we had a discussion about who participated, who didn't participate, and next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that because I think it's worth clarifying. But just some of the other things that we talked about, half of the HOAs that participated in the study were predicted to be in a positive balance if they continued sort of everything as they were doing. The big ticket items that were identified were those building envelope things, so roofs, foundations, exterior siding, that made up the majority of that 8.7 million in projected capital burden. And then health and safety items, those are the things that were called out as needing immediate attention, but totaled much lower, $162,000 in recommended repairs. As we start talking about solutions, we want to address all root causes. We spoke a little bit about some of the root causes of deferred maintenance in the last presentation, but just a reminder, some of those are building age, so some of these properties have been around for quite a while, and other things that go into that, affordability issues, that's, you know, cost of these repairs, cost of contractors, getting contractors who will work on these homes, those sort of things, and then the lack of knowledge and resources. Here, I just wanted to clarify a couple things since y'all did have a bit of a discussion about participating HOAs. I wanted to remind you that these reserve studies are have been given to the HOAs to use as a budgeting tool. HOAs were not required to participate, and some of them opted out because they said they had recently completed a reserve study of their own or felt like they didn't need it for one reason or another. Maybe they have a professional property manager who's done their budgeting and all that is figured out for them. And then getting into the HOAs that were excluded from participation in the studies. So we decided to exclude those HOAs that were majority single-family homes. So those would be some of really big properties, which is why it adds up to this high number of units that we said were ineligible to participate in the studies. So those would be properties like Lazy Glen, Aspen Village, Smuggler Park, North 40, places like that were single-family homes. We thought would have sort of a different outlook on HOA health than the ones that are in these complexes. And then we also excluded the units when there was one deed restricted unit in a mostly free market HOA. And so I added all those up, and that was, we said 729 of our ownership units that were ineligible to participate. So that does contribute to why that number 391 units was lower than I think you all had hoped for. The units that were eligible and opted out, that's 573 units, and those are some of those bigger HOAs, and that I think typically have those professional property managers. So we're talking Burlingame, Hunter Creek, Centennial, and that kind of contributes to why that number is so high.
So those are included in the 573?
So the 570,
Burlingame and
all of those ones, yeah. Midland Park too.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So hopefully that sort of clears up those numbers for you all a little bit. Just wanted to come back. And then, because we talked about, I did a little bit of extrapolation and have an estimate for you. If the 573 had participated, my estimate is that their recommended capital expenditure would be between 7.8 million and 12.7 million. I ran a model. I think it's probably closer to the lower number, but I wanted to give you a range because that's all it is. It's truly a guess. We don't know. But I thought that might help you wrap your head around it.
But I think you made an important point, right?
Yeah.
Burlingame, 1, 2, 3, Centennial, Midland Park, Hunter Creek. I mean, all of those have professional property managers who should be doing all of this. And if
Exactly.
they're not doing it,
That's,
are potentially liable to the HOA, correct?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are protections in Colorado state
Yeah.
law for that. Yeah.
yeah. So these numbers could be lower because of
Kelly?
that too.
I just would like to make a distinction. Having someone who knows and collects the information is separate from doing. So they may have all the information at their hands, but they may not be investing in the things that they know they need to do, which, you know,
Is your
it's a
distinction
future
that
problem to tackle.
is your distinction that the policy states that knowing is the guideline and doing is not included in the legislation? Is that what?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
unconvinced that Hunter Creek has all the money on hand that they need to do all the things that they need to do, even if they know all the
Don't
money
think
that
they
they
do.
need to have on hand and all the things that they need to do. That's all.
I mean, I think to use that example, right, I think I agree with you. They don't have the money, but I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I think some of the HOA dues are $1,500 a month, right? Which
You're trying to catch up.
or more,
Yeah.
right? Which may not be the right number, but it's certainly an acknowledgement that there is a problem they're trying to correct.
Sure.
John,
I really appreciate the range because knowing what we know about construction prices right now, I think that's a safe way to go.
Yeah, and they've been, like skyrocketing for years, right? So I think maybe some of these HOAs are finding that the project that they had 8 years ago that they decided to defer the maintenance on, the cost just, skyrocketed, and now they feel like really very stressed about what they're faced with trying to afford these repairs. And it sounds like maintenance has been deferred for quite some time, and nobody could have predicted that COVID would cause some of the rising costs that it did or whatnot. And I think the other thing is finding contractors can be hard here.
Especially with all the construction projects
Yeah.
that we've got in the pipeline right now.
Yeah.
yeah.
They also say construction's its own season in Colorado, right?
Right.
And then this was a request that we follow up on the conditions. And so as you see, the RD3 classified the majority of the HOAs that participated in the study as being in average condition, which they defined as the system component or overall condition reflects typical wear and tear for a property of its age. It is functioning as intended with no major defects or failures observed. Expected useful life is in line with industry norms. So I think we have two things that we're trying to balance here, right? Is that the study's projected millions of dollars in necessary repairs over the next 10 years and also gave them this sort of average rating. And I think that probably both things are true, that there's a need, and we've heard over and over from homeowners that they need help with some of these huge repairs, and millions of dollars feels unattainable. And that also these buildings are, I guess, what this guy would expect to see for how old they are.
Are we saying that there were no HOAs that were in the poor category?
That is what the study showed across those 27. He didn't classify a single one as straight poor.
So the bell curve is a little bit more towards average and good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So we got that going for us.
Yeah, it's not all doom and gloom, yeah. Not all doom and gloom. And then what we heard from you last time is that yes, education and resource is important. We should prioritize this. So this presentation is just to sort of update you all on what we're already doing, other things that we think we could do, give you an opportunity to say like you're missing this should be on your list as well. And then I was just going to point out that the policies and programs, we are working on building those out, running numbers on that so that we can bring that back to you at a future meeting. So this one, we're just focusing on education and resources. Kind of easy because we've already started, but the other stuff is in the works, and we'll schedule that on one of the future agendas.
And also, APCHA has already done some policies, just to give an example, like in the regulations requiring capital reserve studies and requiring property management for a year after new developments are created. Like Burlingame 3 went through a really comprehensive process for building out the capital reserves for that project. And so we'll be diving into more ideas for policies, but this definitely, like, there has been actions in the last few years too in terms of capital reserves.
Yeah, Peter.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot. Somebody walks up to you and says, "Oh, you work at the city, did the capital reserve study. Like, is our housing inventory in good shape? Like, is it in good shape?"
I guess I would ask like how you would define good shape.
I'm just like an average person. They come up and they say like, well, it's, you know, like APCHA looks after the inventory. Like the goal, if you don't mind going back to the goal. Was,
APCHA does not look after the inventory.
okay.
People in
Goal,
their
partner
units.
with HOAs and stakeholders on maintenance strategies to an approach to achieve a well-maintained inventory by 2030. Do we, it's not a loaded question, I'm just trying to understand from this study, it seems like it actually captures a lot more of the units than I initially thought, and it seems like the capital burden is very manageable and small, but on the other hand, there's like, you hear these anecdotal reports that like things are falling apart, and we just had the Centennial situation, and it seemed like this big conflated issue, and it's either not an issue or it is going to potentially be an issue. And I can't figure out from this report if it's telling us that we have a well-maintained inventory. We don't like.
I know how I would answer that.
I think that
Mixed bag.
it's probably, yeah. I think that
For its age.
it's
Oh,
for
yeah.
its age, yeah.
Okay.
I think the buildings are aging, and in the future, they're projecting that they're gonna need large capital repairs. I think that they're not, you know, falling down
Yeah.
either. So I don't know that I would say it's good based on this report. I would say it's average. I don't know.
But there's none that are poor.
Yeah, Emily, can we go back to the bell curve page, because that's a pretty clear indicator right here that the bell curve, the average distribution is on the good side of average, whereas if you would just expect any sort of statistical distribution, that it would be worse. So we're actually above average based on the expectations that you might apply.
Above average. All right. Well, I can
Solid
roll
C.
with that. Yeah.
And I really do believe that it does depend on the age of the buildings and the age of that property. I mean, Midland Park, they have been a more aggressive HOA, and they really have a good HOA, and they make sure things are taken care of. They're one of the oldest deed restricted deed restricted projects out there. In fact, they are almost the first one. And but they also have a very proactive HOA that's taking care of things from day one. but I do believe that you have some other ones, which they were lower category, and you didn't have the experience of people who had been part of an HOA to really know what they needed to do with setting up budgets and stuff like that. That's why when we started doing a lot more education, it has helped. And when we require now that a capital reserve study be done and a capital reserve fund be done, Burlingame, anybody who buys a new owner on that, they have to pay into the capital reserve fund up front. And I don't know if that's something that we can try to talk to other HOAs into starting, as to when they sell something, it's going to be a certain amount that they have to come up front with, 1,000, because I think we've got one that's a little over 1,000 that they have to come up with an additional 1,000 that goes into the capital reserve fund. So anybody who's purchasing a new one, maybe that's what we try to recommend people, is that you have any new owner comes in when they purchase, because then it's rolled into a 30-year loan. And it doesn't hit them so much when it's rolled into a 30-year loan. But then that money has to be earmarked for the capital reserve fund, and it has to stay in that in that part of the capital reserve fund.
There we go.
So our issues are, things are above average. Our bigger concern is that the inventory is aging and that HOAs are gonna have to increase dues to keep up with major capital improvements.
And I think to take the conversation full circle, as we look at data that shows us that in 10 years, 59% of the ownership units will be occupied by owners 65 or older. I think when you, in general, I think as we get older and we, move towards retirement, fixed income, right? Like, I think as you have aging properties and your expenses are going up, you've sort of got this compounding issue where you have people that are less willing and able to pay more, where you have properties that are requiring more, right? And to me, that's where I think a lot of the talk about, the future problems and, conditions that are, again, compounding kind of at the same time. I think that's really where I see the big problem in the future is, we're okay right now. And so I think, anything that we could do now to encourage or reward is really, I think, how we should be looking at it. These HOAs, right, some of these were, I think one of the examples you gave us, they were projected to have like $1 million surplus in 10 years.
Yeah.
To me, I look at that and I think that HOA, they should be rewarded. We should do something to say, good job. You've got the reserve built. It's very unlikely that you're going to have a property that falls into disrepair, that has large special assessments. And so, if it's waiving the 2% APCHA sales fee or, however you do it, but just finding a way to incentivize people to say, hey, look, if we get our HOA, to this position when we sell, there will be an additional reward. Personally, I think that's something we should explore.
I love that. Carson, along the solutions-focused approach, what you could respond to that hypothetical community member, depending on their means, is 60% of the total portfolio burden stems from 3 categories: building envelope, mechanical systems, and site drainage. 2 out of those 3 are supported by APCHA and core programs that we have funding available for, so donate and get involved. Because we have a solution. We're working on this, right? It's above average, but it could be better. And here are some pathways for you to put your dollar and your effort in.
And another thing Emily and I talked about with this is we were really, it's really exciting to see average to good there. But at the end of the day, components are still going to fail and owners are up against fixed incomes like you talked about, Carson, but then just the really high costs of construction here, because how much did the heat pump project cost at Bavarian Inn? It's okay. I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, my mind just went blank, and I'm like, it's in there somewhere. Just
yeah, it's like
fish
it was
out.
like
It's
500.
yeah, it's over $400,000.
Yeah, it was like between $400,000 and $500,000 for the total project of replacing heat pumps for.
I know the grant was $210,000.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the total was.
So let's message the contractors and get them up in ACI.
And core, helped a lot with that
Yeah,
as
Core
well.
was the really
Yeah.
big
Yeah,
partner
so
in
Core
that.
became involved with that because they changed from one system to another system as well, so.
But
And they're
and
talking
getting that
to other,
grant took 3 years.
and Core's actively talking to other HOAs who got their studies and said, we're gonna need new boilers in the next year or two, and, reach out to Core and see what they can help you with, or what they can offer you with, so.
And also, I just want to say, at the end of the month, I'm giving a presentation about right sizing again, and there's going to be some age data in that. So I know just because we were talking about that today.
So if big picture, people are facing higher HOA dues, and there's an incentive for them to increase their capital reserves, and so they're raising their HOA dues, but people on fixed income are sort of getting priced out and saying, I can't afford these HOA dues, isn't a reasonable transition for them to move into rental housing where they can retire?
Reasonable on what, in what terms?
Well, just like, it's a trade-off. It's like the younger people moving in may have an appetite to pay high HOA dues and whatever. And the people on fixed income may say, I can't afford these dues. As an alternative, I can move into rental housing where I can retire, have no, it's the same as ownership, and my unit's taken care of for me, and I don't have any assessments, and I know what my rental cost is gonna be. Like, to me, that seems like an attractive option for people.
I think that's why we're providing it as a voluntary right-sizing option. Yeah, absolutely.
Has the city council had any discussions about that as far as like
Priority for lumber.
priority for rentals, trade for right sizing for?
I'm trying to remember what Chris said last time.
I know they tried it at Burlingame
Yeah.
3, and I think they only had.
It wasn't
It
I think they
was
set
one-
aside
successful.
one out
5
of
units, and they
five,
had
I
like
think.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, you need to find a project like the lumberyard and see if it's something that they could put out there as if you're interested and you want to retire and you own, but you have no place to move into a rental situation, then maybe they can provide a priority for anybody who's retired that wants to move out of their ownership unit into a rental and still stay in the valley.
I mean, I don't even know that you need to limit it to retirees. I mean, it's like if you live in an ownership unit and you want to move into a rental, great, come on in.
I might also suggest that, if we get to a point of talking about spending money on solutions, one thing you could do is help subsidize the cost, the HOA costs, the capital reserves costs. So
Yeah.
someone on a fixed income or someone in a lower category that's now priced way above their category, for these kind of contributions, instead of making like a bulk contribution to the HOA, because maybe you have a bunch of people who can't afford to pay that, you pay through folks who are income qualified and can't afford. Might be a different way to do it.
And I'll just throw this question out for city, county, APCHA staff. I mean, like I'm looking at page 32 and 3. There's a lot of seeming roof issues. So missing shingles, and roofing. I feel like is kind of one of those things that is.
Entry point.
It's fair. It's maybe one of the most important things as far as like the longevity of a building, but also like it's a relative commodity in the sense that, an asphalt roof is an asphalt roof.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is there any way to put out an RFP to say, hey, here's 3 or 4 different buildings that all need roofs, Denver, Grand Junction. Next summer, do you guys want to come up and do all 3 of these and bid on all this work at one time?
We had lunch with Community Development Department last week, and we had kind of been thinking that would not be possible.
Yeah.
They kind of disagreed, so we're at very early stages, but they were much more enthusiastic about trying to develop something like that than we
Really
thought-
excited
we
to hear
thought they'd
that.
be.
It
Yeah.
would be super exciting
Yeah.
to cross that with fire mitigation codes and have metal roofs put on at
And-
the same time.
insurance, right? I mean, that hits a lot of.
So I think roofs,
Checks a lot of boxes.
windows, those are the kind of things where I think we could definitely get some economies of scale if we could get people up.
That's one of the reasons why we want to have a copy with the HOA, so
Yeah.
that they can start to talk and say, well, this is what we would like to do in a year or two, and then they say, oh, we want to do that too.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can get that started as well.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge, I think, is, right, if anybody's been on an HOA board, it's hard enough to get your own HOA.
Oh, I know,
Right?
I
And then
know.
it's like, so if you're trying to get
That's a good
point.
two or three HOA, but I think if it was like a formal,
Yeah.
where you could say, okay, we're going to be putting out an RFP for boilers, for roofing, for siding, and maybe start with those three areas, because I feel like that's most of the expense. And we're going to put this out, and we're going to target this for summer 2026. And if you're interested, give us a contact person, give us the basic details. We'll include you in the RFP. Somebody will be up to quote all of this and get that out. Because I think now we're sort of in that time frame now where you could put this out, people could start planning for that. And I think there's some real economies of scale where you could really, there could be material savings where somebody might drive up from Denver.
Yeah.
If there's enough work to do it, whereas they wouldn't maybe necessarily do that for one property.
I would love to see us attack replacing boilers with heat pumps. Economy of scale at the same time. That would be awesome.
So that's so keep us posted. If there's anything we can do to help ComDev, if there or asset department, whoever's talking about that. If there's anything we can, is there anybody who's not interested in something like that?
Great.
Yeah.
And
Just let us, I would say, but it is something that needs to happen relatively quickly if, for next year, because
it's
they're starting
great
to plan.
timing actually, because last bullet is facilitate
Yeah,
pooled
you-
procurement.
You jumped ahead. Yeah. Your mind reading. I just let you run.
So you had
it.
it. We didn't have the
You
slide
can
up
give
yet.
the yeah,
He's a natural chair.
natural.
Exactly.
But that facilitate pooled procurement was one of our D3's recommendations, and I think that APCHA could take a sort of facilitation role and send out a survey or something to HOAs and say, okay, in the next however long, who needs a roof? Let's get you all together in the roof bin, and maybe we can get a reduced cost for a contractor to do all 6 of your roofs. And so I think it's a good idea. I think we need to talk with an APCHA to see what exactly our role can be, but I think that the coffee morning on October 14th is a good first step for us to get some people from the HOAs together and say you all talking is gonna help with this, and we're happy to help with some of the logistics.
So I'm just gonna flag something to think about early. You'll have 6 roofs that need to be replaced in 6 buildings of different size with 6 different savings accounts and 6 different per unit or per square foot contributions to their capital reserve. And so just doing some early thinking about how you equitably distribute the cost of one contract among 6 roofs that have those different factors is just something to think about early, I think.
So I would have it as a pool, and I would have the way that I think a roofer should look at it if you're doing the roofs is I think you should say, HOA A, B, C, D, E. Our cost for A is X, our cost for B is Y, and we don't want to do C, and D doesn't have enough money to do it. But I think that it's almost like the roofing company is contracting individually with each HOA and not with the city and not with anybody else. There's no allocation. It's an economies of scale thing. They can come up, they can keep their guys up here for a month, and they can knock out $4 million worth of work or whatever the number is, and they can make that work, right? And I think that's where the cost comes down is when you get people that can travel here to do the work because there's so much work.
And I would love for it to be that simple.
I agree. Hey, I'm.
No, we know
Idea.
that there are HOAs that don't have enough money to pay
True.
for their roof. So then if they're gonna come to us or the city or the county or whatever and say, can you help us pay for this? We may want to, but we may also have to just think about, okay, like what's fair here and.
How
you
do
know,
we
just
manage?
flagging that. I don't think the contractor is the issue. I think the.
There are
end user,
loans out there.
The HOAs.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, right?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Yeah.
There are loans out
There
there.
are
That's
loans.
what
Yeah.
we did
Yes.
for our HOA.
But you know, I mean, I think if you need a roof and you can get the roof at 15% less than 20% less than what you might have paid, you know, otherwise.
Yeah, you want to figure it out.
We also hope going through one contractor would simplify permit processes as well.
Yeah.
Well, and
And we
if
we
we
brought
could-
that up with ComDev as well, the permit process, and they made a really interesting point that I don't think we had quite realized, that the permitting process for anything in Aspen is designed around, you know, the 20, 30, $40 million homes, and they have experts to get it through the permitting process. And so when you're asking the average APCHA homeowner to take care of that, that's a big burden on them. So we were in discussions with them on trying to make that easier for the average APCHA homeowner. I don't think we had really quite. I certainly hadn't quite realized that. Of course, they've got people who will just take care of it. Yeah. So having some good discussions.
It'd be really neat to be able to house the contractors
Yeah,
too.
we've
That'd
had
be a
that.
really cool
We've
component.
had that talk about possibly, is there, during the off seasons when Merle's empty, maybe something like that, if something like that is possible.
Seated bargaining chip.
Now
Yeah.
you're thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great
Yeah.
idea. I love it.
I just want to say I'm feeling really proud to be part of this board right now.
Good. Well, I mean, we've solved all the problems. I guess.
Yeah,
No more executive
that's
session.
it, thanks. Let's end on a high note,
It's
right?
that easy, right?
That programs was after education.
We do have some other great stuff going on though, so I'm just gonna run through the HOA education series that Meg's been so great at planning and scheduling, and these are recorded, so we're gonna have a whole bank of these videos as well. We're gonna keep doing this, and we're gonna hopefully have it, you know, eventually become like a sort of curriculum or something like that for the HOAs, as like a, here's all these videos, there's these in-person seminars, some of them will be virtual kind of thing, so that you can educate yourself on a variety of topics. And then these next points, the information sharing for HOAs, we kind of talked about that with the coffee morning, maybe having a forum on the website, some way to get them talking to each other. That point, and then the resources listed in the bullets below that. This is all going to go into, and I'll talk about it more on the next slide, like a new HOA hub on the new APCHA website. So the website's like in design, but Meg has a vision for having it look really nice and being a place where HOAs can go to get all this information, resources, connect to other HOAs if they have questions about issues or contractors or insurance or whatever it may be. So I think that she's doing a great job of getting all this organized and planning out the website in a really well thought out way that's going to be easy for people to get to this information. And then we kind of touched on, we're also working on that, like an APCHA homeowner ed class. You know, people are required to take the home buyer course that's by Fannie Mae or whoever, and that's sort of geared toward home ownership in general. So we want to have a APCHA class that's like more like what's it like to own an APCHA home, and it will include some information for new HOA members, so that when new people are coming into HOAs, they can also get all the information that they need about what it's like to be an APCHA home buyer in an APCHA HOA and whatnot.
And the home buyer, the homeowner H101 class, that is actually directly from the strategic plan and your discussions earlier in the year. So
So we're working on that too.
Thank
I
you.
think, in that including a capital reserve study and what it means and why it's important.
Hmm.
I think that'd be great.
Yeah, I think that she'll have resources like that on there too, that it'll be, a link to why a capital reserve.
Why
is
should
such
you
important-
care?
And then some other select resources of, here's other important things that you should have on your radar. So good stuff there. The other thing we talked about was for self-managed properties, maybe a sample guide for a maintenance schedule. So here's what a maintenance schedule for 10 years might look like. Maybe you can use this and apply it to your HOA.
On
Something
the
like that.
self-managed,
Mhm.
it was like 753 units that couldn't participate in the capital reserve study. We don't really have a handle on those, but they sort of self-manage, and the condition of those units is really when they turn over. If it's a trailer or a single-family home, it's like that's when the deferred maintenance gets addressed. We don't have a concern about the self-managed units. Is that
So
right?
a lot of those, I think we're kind of confusing two things. There are self-managed HOAs amongst the ones that participated and amongst probably the ones that were ineligible. A lot of those units that were ineligible were those single-family home complexes. So to your point, maybe different problems because those people may not be eligible for the grant program, but the grant program would be one way to touch on unit maintenance. Some of these properties are RO, which is excluded from the grant program. But to your point, yes, those seller standards things, and there's other ways for those units to be maintained. And those HOAs, obviously the single family home is not the responsibility of the HOAs for those. So sort of a different unit maintenance thing that you're getting at. But hopefully some of them are able to access the grant program and use those funds to bring their single family homes up to snuff, and people are replacing roofs and things with the grant program in that way.
Peter, I wouldn't say we're not worried about them. I would just say that for those that are professionally managed, I think we can at least be sure that it's not being ignored.
Mhm. Yeah, I was just thinking too about like the equitability across, if you're trying to get into a 3-bedroom and you could get into a trailer or into a condo association, and you see the HOA dues in the condo association because they're proactive about maintaining their building and doing the deferred maintenance. You're like, well, I'm just going to go towards this option. Like,
That's a choice.
yeah. So you get a lot more demand for the things that have lower HOA dues, and people reluctantly going into what they can get into that has higher HOA dues. I guess that's.
Yeah, there's not a built-in requirement or incentive for understanding your long-term costs.
Yeah, and I guess
Trailer.
if you're in the trailer, you get grant programs to help you out, whereas your HOA, you don't.
But you're not paying for everything yourself either. It's a little bit different.
Yeah. Okay.
But you may never save. You may just let the thing totally fall apart.
Right.
Right? Which in an HOA, there's a structural consideration that prevents you from doing that.
Mhm.
And we have rules which prevent you from doing that. So it is definitely different.
I feel like when we talk about unit sustainability, we definitely really group out the different components to it, whether it's mobile homes even different from standard single family homes as well, separate from common elements.
Mhm.
We just are like, there's the different pieces of the puzzle.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
I
I'll
think
just pull this up for you. Here's what's scheduled now. So we've got some good stuff coming up on the schedule. And then Meg is working with Molly to do these HOA office hours in the spring, and that would be, she'll have a sign up for HOAs. They can sign up to have a one-on-one with Molly and be specific about what that's going to be about, and she can update their HOA docs during that one-on-one and So that's also in the works as something that Molly's gonna help us do.
Is there a PR opportunity with Carolyn or someone to, because this is a complex issue? I know they talked about the initial findings with the capital reserve study, but I thought the talking points of we're above average and the areas that are of concern, we have these opportunities to improve those units, and HOA dues will continue to go higher, but you have the option of rental housing where you can retire and be as secure as in ownership housing. Is there some narrative that can be relayed from all this?
I want to say we got to just publish that the largest number that we have on this list and tell the community, because that number, if you look at it in terms of the value of this community, is really small, actually. And there, I think it would, as it surprised me when I saw that whatever it is, that 6.6 million is mechanical or thermal envelope, building envelope. That's an approachable number. It feels crazy to an APCHA resident, but to this community and in Pitkin County, that's a really approachable number. And maybe that's something that we need to yell from a mountaintop. And maybe all we'll hear is an echo, but that would be my feedback, is that specifically saying again that APCHA has these funds available for improvements and that CORE is looking to help improve building efficiency, and also stating the truth of the context that we face as a community might be a helpful narrative.
Yeah,
to push
I'll
out.
plug that into what, sorry.
I was going to say, I think the message is that we've got a bunch of HOAs that have done a really good job managing their properties. That have reserved, that don't have significant deferred maintenance, and I think that we should celebrate that. I think we also have a bunch that have work to do and could find themselves in a tight spot if they don't make some changes, right? But I think on the whole, we don't want complacency, and we don't. I think the message is, good job. To the ones that have, that have managed their HOA.
Kind of create a social norm around it.
Yeah, totally.
I like
And
that.
again, I really do think that as a board, we should explore ways to reward people that are taking care of their property and it could even just be a token, like I said, as waiving the 2% fee or whatever. But I feel like if we reward it, right, we should be rewarding what we
Incentives.
want
Yeah.
and incentivize what we want. And again, so tonight we talked about capital reserves, we talked about compliance. I think those are the two most important things that this board does as far as building trust. So thank you all for your work.
And then in December, we're going to talk about the other one, communication.
Communication. Yeah.
Well, Team ALE, as you're now ALE, thank you for your hard work. This has been really helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Kelly,
I'll second.
second from John. It's a roll call vote.
Okay. Scott,
Yes.
Carson,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
Thank you.
Meeting is adjourned, 5:59.